Hi, welcome. I'm Michael. Welcome to The Journey Pets. Today we're going to be breaking down pet and kid safety. The new pup, what do we do? What do kids do? Where do they play and how do they play with the puppy? We're going to be talking about body language. How does that look? Relax, anxious. Are hugs okay? Mealtime, playtimes with kids? What's the appropriate time for kids to play with puppies? Well, we're going to be breaking all this down today with Jen and Sarah, and we're going to be digging into it. So sit back and let's play. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pet and Kid Safety today. Do you have a new pup? What do we do with our kids and our dogs? That's what we're going to be breaking down today with Sarah and Jen. Sarah's a trainer here in Southern California. She really works with, she has a puppy club. She's got so many different things going on with puppies, and she really likes working with puppies and her clients. And she's got so much knowledge that she can help, break a puppy through so many different levels of behavioral issues potentially, or just setting them up to win. And then we've got Jen, who's a dog walker here, pet sitter, and a trainer here in Monrovia, not too far from me. And she just has a love for animals that I just adore. And she's always looking out for the animal, which I think is number one, because that's our goal here, is to set up our pets to win. With that, we'd love for Sarah to say hello to everybody.
Hello. Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. It's a brand new week. I've missed Clubhouse. As you said, I'm in San Diego, and I specialize in helping new pet owners get set up with their puppies so they can feel confident their pup will thrive and have a wonderful relationship with their dog, all based on positive training methods. Jen?
Miss Jen?
Michael?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now we can, yeah.
I don't know what happened there. My name is Jen. I'm in Southern California in a little town called Monrovia, and I've got 3 whippets, and I'm a dog trainer, pet sitter, and dog walker, and I've been working in the animal space for over 30 years, and I love helping families bring in new puppies, new pets, and how they work together is kind of like my favorite thing to work with, working with families and just integrating everybody together.
And I think that's the magic, is being able to have everybody integrated as one whole family. Our furry family and our human family it's so important when we can create that bond. So let's jump off into this, ladies, pet and kid safety. Where do you want to start? I know we talk about, children being around dogs and puppies. And I know during the puppies, first days on this planet, they really need some special handling and special care. And sometimes they can get distracted with kids. What do you think, Sarah? Where do you start with your clients in explaining and expressing how kids should be interacting with a puppy?
A new puppy in the house, but I think it's important to recognize there are kind of 3 facets of looking at families. We've got, the family that is that has kids and is bringing in a new puppy. We've got families that have a puppy maybe or a dog, and they're bringing in a new child, right? They're having a baby. Or we've got families that have children and dogs already coexisting. And I think Jen will agree that everything we talk about really goes in line with all of those little buckets, so to speak. But I think the very first thing, Michael, when you asked about, setting up the dog and the kids, it's really about having a good management in place. And I like to have a safety zone, so to speak, for the dog, for the puppy, so that they have their own place to be away from the kids, and the kids can be on the outskirts of that, so we can keep interaction safe and we can manage and monitor the whole time.
So, Jen, I would love to hear your input on this.
Yeah, I definitely think that management is one of the main factors in having kids and dogs coexist in the same space or in slightly separate spaces, making sure that everyone has what they need as far as, distance and when it's appropriate to be closer and how to be closer and all of that kind of stuff it's all mingled into what we're here talking about today. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to get started.
Yay. So Sarah, you were talking, okay, so that's, a family has a dog and they're maybe bringing in a new baby, or Maybe they have a kid already and they're bringing in a new puppy, or maybe they already have kids and dogs. And this safety, what we're talking about today, is important for all three factors. When we're talking about safety, what's the first go-to with, because like I think when I think about what we're talking about here, I'm going to go to the first one, dogs with kids. Let's say we have a dog and they're bringing in a new baby. What would be the safety factors that somebody wants to put in place with their family before the baby gets home with having a dog at home?
Yeah, we have to understand that that's a huge change in environment for that dog, bringing in a baby into the home. Their whole world is going to be uprooted, as are the parents' world. And so really from the dog's perspective, what is that dog going to deal with emotionally, and how can we help them have an understanding that, the world is still going to can be calm and safe for them. So I like to have, baby gates or exercise pens or crates, depending what your dog is already used to. Or if you start, I have some clients that call me when they're pregnant, when they first get pregnant, to help teach their dog how to feel comfortable when the baby arrives. And so having a safety zone for the dog to retreat to keep that distance and let them have a place to self-calm in without being bothered by the noises and the activity, the hustle and bustle that's going to go on. And really, having a routine set up, I think, is really important as well, because sadly for new mamas, and I know I'm a mom of three, their focus is gonna go on the baby, and so we don't want to forget about the dog. And so having a routine, whether it's enrichment puzzles at a certain time of the day, or getting a dog walker in place, things like this are really, really important to consider. So when the time comes, when the day comes, the dog isn't left in the dust. So, but management. We often think, oh, let's let the dog sniff the baby and everything will be good. And I always say, you don't get a pizza delivery at the door and bring the pizza box down to the dog's level and say, here, sniff the pizza, Fido. Take a sniff, and take a real good sniff, because you're not going to get any, right? So we really got to make sure that we're being smart about it and keeping the distance for safety.
Oh, you crack me up. I love that analogy, the pizza box. Here's your pizza, sniff, but you can't have a bite. So you mentioned you have kids. I know you have kids. Did you have this situation where with your first child, did you have a dog already, or did you get dogs after your kids?
That's a great question. Yeah, I actually had a little rescue dog. His name was Bosley, and before I had my first child, and I had a really nice, I called it the bullpen, and it was a big plastic kind of exercise octagon that at first I had Bosley in there just to acclimate, but over time as the baby, as James, my oldest, grew, he was in the playpen, and everything that he was doing was in there. And so the dog was able to stay comfortable on the outskirts while James played inside the pen.
Well, we talked about, and I've heard this so many times where there's jealousy between the dog and the baby, especially if the dog's been there before. Did you experience any of that jealousy with the dog?
I didn't. And remember that jealousy is kind of an emotion that we add to, kind of anamorphizing. But it really comes down to behavior. We really want to look at, what is the dog displaying behaviorally? Are they becoming anxious? What does that look like? Are they retreating? Are they trying to seek our attention because they're trying to feel good or better about this situation, the noise, the cooing, all these things. So I think when we kind of redirect our focus to observing better, and maybe Jen can talk a little bit about the importance of, the body language aspect, but I really think we can kind of get out of our heads on trying to label, how the dog is really feeling in the moment, but really observe that behavior to set the dog up for success in that new environment.
And I love that you said that, because like we as humans, we do that. We automatically, like I just did that. I'm like, was he jealous? Well, maybe they don't get jealous. Maybe it's really a behavioral change that you need to look at it. And with that, Jen, let's talk about body language. What are we looking for? We always talk about get to know who your dog is today, not the dog that you had 5 years ago or a week ago that's been in your life still, but just get to know who they are today, because they change just like we do. So let's talk about body language a little bit, Jen.
Yeah. So, like Sarah just touched on the fact that babies make noises like cooing, and we make funny noises to our babies, right? And there's crying, and there's, laughing, and arms moving, and legs kicking, and there's all sorts of things that babies will do, or young kids will do, like toddlers. They're trying to learn how to walk, right? And the slightly older kids, they're walking, and sometimes their hands are moving, and they're yelling because they're having fun, and they're just being kids. And so all of those noises, and all of those actions for our dogs sometimes could be scary or look weird, and they don't know how to handle that. And so I think preparing a dog for those types of things, while a woman is pregnant, is a really good idea. Like what Sarah said, that some of our clients will call, when they find out that they're pregnant. Oh, we've got this dog too. Like let's figure out how we're going to do this.
Do you find?
And part of that, I'm sorry.
Part
of that is just observing the dog when you are preparing the dog for the baby. And I think a lot of preparing for a baby is getting them used to those noises. And if there are any kids in the neighborhood who are really great around dogs, or you can, there are ways to introduce kids and dogs outside of the house that will help inside of the house, right? Or bringing other kids that and that you can work with your dog, so that there's a really nice working relationship in that training session with a professional trainer, so that the parents know what to look for as far as body language. I think that getting to know your dog's signals, whether it's stress or demanding behavior like Vinny, whatever it is, getting to know what they're doing, or what they're thinking, or what they're thinking about doing is kind of important. And we can do that just learning body language. And there's an amazing book by Lily Chin, Doggy Language. It's $10 on Amazon, and that's a really good place for people to start if they don't have any knowledge of body language. It's a great kid-friendly book as well.
Yeah, I have the book, and I love the book, and it just really breaks down. It's interesting because you don't. I always say we don't know what we don't know. And when you read books like this, you're like, oh wow, I never knew that what that meant. Getting back to the dog with a baby. Like we have our formula, no more drama for 4th of July. People are like, buying it for the anxiety of their pups and all that. And one of the things we do is we have a blog on our website that says, the 8 tips that you can do to keep your dog safe during the 4th of July. And one of the things we talk about, and I think, and I'm touching on what you're talking about, Jen, and wondering if you guys would do the same with, dogs, is that we will say, turn on a TV station with fireworks and put it really low, and let the dog listen to it and get used to it. And then just, next day, turn it up a little bit more and, just kind of let them get used to the noise. Would you do the same thing and maybe have a TV station with kids, baby noises on it for the dog? Have you ever thought of anything like that, Jen?
Yeah. There's very specific ways of doing that, and making sure that your dog is okay at like a really, really, really low volume, and the correct distance from the dog, and a really nice reward system, between you and your dog. So I would love for Sarah, if she's available, to chime in more about that, because that's a really big subject. I think that isn't always done correctly, and I think that there are some really great steps to take in that direction to get our dogs used to certain noises. But I think Sarah might be able to shed some more light on that.
Sarah, any more noise on that?
Any more noise? Yeah, and Jen makes a good point. A lot of people they have good intentions, but then they just overexpose their dog to sounds. And so the real important thing is, as she said, start really quietly. We don't want to hope that the dog is going to do well or not do well at a high sound, high level. We just want to bet that if we start really, really low and quiet, they are by default going to be great at it, right? So start really low and then build. And the other thing is not doing it for a long duration. When people want to work on like door knocks or doorbell desensitization, people think that they need to pound really loud and do it 20 million times. But that's overexposure. That's going to stress the dog out, because they might do okay for the first couple repetitions, but then number 3, 4, 5, and 6, the dog has just lost it, right? It's way too difficult. So it really is, as you always say, Michael, baby steps. I will tell you that I had one particular customer that stands out to me that was welcoming their first child. They had an older, very anxious golden retriever. And we actually did a little bit of sound desensitization with baby noises, baby crying. Because there's differences between a newborn baby and a toddler screaming. So we have to look at those different phases. And so we actually had her standing inside her little pen where the baby would be secured, where we put the baby swing, and all the toys and things like that. And I had her get a baby doll at the store. She went to Toys R Us and she bought a doll, and she bought a swaddle, and she wrapped that doll up, and she shoved her phone right underneath the doll and the baby blanket, and it was kind of muffled. And we worked on having her stand and rocking and shaking and shushing her baby with a little bit of that crying on it, to really create the picture, simulate what it's really going to look like when baby's home and we've got this dog that's like, what's going on? While the husband was tossing some yummy cookies to the dog for being relaxed on his bed. And so that's what I want parents to think about. How can we create this picture? And if you're a new mom, you don't really know what it's going to look like. So getting a professional in there that's experienced can really, really help shed some light, which then de-stresses everybody, right?
Well, especially if they're coming home with a baby, they barely know what the baby's going to be like, but how are they going to know the relationship between the baby and the dog? So yeah, having a professional there, I think is so, so important. It's just like we talk about this all the time, building your team. It's always good to have your team around you during all phases of your dog's, your kids' lives and all that. So let's go to the next step, a baby coming into the house. Let's say there's kids there and all of a sudden we're bringing in a dog for the first time into the kids. Where do we start with the safety there? Because the kids have been running around the house. They own the house. They go in and out. They leave the doors open and all that. Where do we start implementing safety tips for our kids when we bring in a new dog? What do you think about that, Sarah?
Well, I think I'm going to just share really quick a comment that I received on an intake form from a new puppy owner with a 16-week-old puppy, okay, with young children. I think they may have 3 or 4 children, probably under the age of 6. And her comments on, because we asked if the dog has growled at a person, her descriptions were, she has growled when our kids take her food when she's eating. She has growled and shown her teeth when my youngest daughter was poking her when she was trying to rest. She has bit my son when trying to play, and my son tries to play with her and act like a puppy. So these make me cringe. And this is where we talk about body language and safety and management and interactions that are welcomed and invited. As we say, invites reduce bites. So, and if people here listening are not familiar with Family Paws, it's a fabulous website with lots of resources, familypaws.com. And so that's one of their mottos is invites reduce bites. And so this description of what I just read off of our intake form is filled with opportunity to help not only educate children, but also help puppies be safer. So I'm going to go back to a safety zone is important, and helping children better understand how to interact with puppies safely by inviting them over to say hi and not, and also the parents, like that's a lot of mismanagement and supervision happening, right? So it really does start with the parents.
What do you think, Jen?
100%. If my thumb was able to clap as fast as I wanted it to, would have been clapping for the entire thing. Everything Sarah just said was spot on. And those things are part of why we get so many puppies in our training center who are upset with having kids around, is because of those things that are allowed. And so, everything Sarah said.
Well, we talk all the time about when we bring in a puppy into our home, it usually takes, you even mentioned, Jen, I believe you said 3 months in one of our rooms, where it takes them to get acclimated to the house. So I can't imagine a puppy coming into a house with 3-4 kids acting like dogs, poking, stealing their food, what the trauma that is actually causing to the dog. And so I can understand that, really. So where do you start training the kids? How do you train the kids? What's your thoughts on that, since you have kids, Sarah?
Yeah, so I love to, it's kind of like people who have potty trained a child, you're kind of consistently, bringing them to the potty and taking them to the potty and praising them for going and asking them if they have to go and observing their behavior, right? A mother is so good at observing their child's behavior, and they just need to do that with the dog. And so the more that we can be consistent with little phrases like, when the dog is laying down, we go around. When the dog is chewing his bone, we leave him alone. Now, my kids at a very young age learned, especially when I brought Nick in, who was 4, and we went from a little 10-pound terrier who kind of kept himself to a 65-pound Australian Shepherd. I had my youngest at the time he was like 2.5. And so, sadly, people kind of brush off the little nips and bites, but gosh, if that's a big, large breed dog, that's not so funny anymore, right? So it's really important to teach the children, for example, when the dog is licking his lips or yawning, he's saying, no, thank you. He's saying, no, thank you. And you need to leave him alone. And we're going to redirect our children. We don't want to be nagged. We want to praise them, and we want to redirect them, and we want to guide them. And we want to be that middleman. The child should never be that person that closes the gap. There should always be an adult in between the child and the dog. I always say, mind the gap, because there should always, I don't care if it's an 8-week-old puppy or a 12-year-old dog, there should always be a gap and supervision happening with a child and a dog.
What about hugs? Jen?
Oh, this is a big one. This is a big one. And Sarah and I always send each other photos, of kids who are too close, or kids who are hugging a dog, and the whites of the dog's eyes are showing. We call that whale eye, or there's lip licking going on, or yawning, or just it's clear that the dog isn't interested. And those photos always scare me. They always scare me 100% of the time. I've never seen a photo of a kid hugging a dog that I'm comfortable with. Not ever. And there are so many dogs who don't want to be hugged. They just don't. It's not something that they're into. Maybe a few dogs like it, maybe on their terms, but hugs are a no-go for me. What about you, Sarah?
No hugging. Kidding. I have a friend. This is years ago. We're still good friends. And at the time, her kids were, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 or something like that. And they would come, they come to our house a lot. And the boy, typical really high energy boy. And they have a dog. They have a little dog, like a 10-pound dog. And they would come over and he would straddle, without me looking, all of a sudden I turn around. He would be straddling my dog or hugging my dog. And I said, no, not in our house. We don't hug dogs. Dogs aren't born loving hugs. And, it's easier to say no hugs than to sit there and have a discussion about nonverbal behavior in the moment. But yeah, dogs, yes, as Jen said, there are lots of dogs that enjoy pets and loves and hugs, but we just need to be better observers and really understand, is the dog tolerating it? Are they just fine? Because fine is not okay for me. Or are they really, truly relaxed and enjoying it and seeking more? So, again, I'll go back to that body language. Super important.
Sarah's, I see on Instagram, or you see on TikTok, you'll see these little kids running up to dogs, hugging them. And I'm just like, what are they thinking? And it scares me, because you never know. And it's like, we're, as humans, we don't necessarily like to be hugged by strangers. So why would dogs like to be hugged by strangers? That's where I always go to that parallel between us and dogs. Is like, how would we feel in this situation? And yeah, that can be overwhelming for a dog, and that can be frightening for a dog. I can only imagine, especially if they have any sort of anxiety or anything coming from their previous home or from the kennel or wherever they're coming, or they're not even acclimated to the house. Just hugs are just dangerous for me in general to think about with kids. I mean, it's a little scary. We talked about kids running up, they're hugging dogs and all that. So let's talk about kids in an appropriate time for them to play. How do we set that safety arena up for the kids and the dogs? Let's say it's our own home, our own kids, our own dogs. How do we create that safe space? What's your first step, Sarah?
I think you need to find a place in the house that's going to work for you with regards to, a setup. I've seen, people have rooms, people use pens, people use baby gates, folding gates, and some people, I have a client that cleared out an entire playroom for the dog. They removed their living room table. I mean, I think it kind of depends on your space. But for the most part, a little exercise pen octagon is plenty of room for a young puppy, and you attach the crate into that space, which gives you more ample space. So it's almost like you attach the sides of the exercise pen to the sides of the crate. I think, Jen, you and I talked about this in another room a while back, didn't we? Like setting up safety zones or something like that. But yeah, and I would instruct children, first of all, crates are off limit. You don't ever have a child crawl into a crate of a dog. That's their safe place, and that often occurs without parental supervision. So those are things to look at. But as far as a safety zone, having a nice, some people will put a little artificial turf in there, toys, water, chews, things like that. But and some people will put, depending on what you've got on the floor, they might add like those exercise mats, on the floor or a whelping pad.
So would you limit, would you give play times, okay, you get 20 minutes, you get 10 minutes. How would you incorporate that?
With children?
Yeah, let's say now we've got the playpen set up, we've got the atmosphere all set up, the bowls are there, the grass is there, it all looks pretty. Now we're going to let the kids play with the dog for a while to have that interaction that's appropriate. Do we give them playtime from 12:30 to 1, or do we give them a timing? Is it because what you're talking about earlier, both of you, is if it's too much, you could look at the body language of the dog and they start to cower or whatever. So I know you're keeping your finger on the pulse with your dog by looking at your dog, but let's say you're leaving the room. Are you giving them 15 minutes? Is there a time frame that you want to look at? Do you want to do baby steps again? How do we go into this?
Yeah, it's not time. It could be 5. We can't put a time to it. The dogs, we've got to go the dog's pace. So they're going to tell us what's good. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 10 minutes. And once you get your puppy in, as you said, Michael, earlier, bringing a puppy home, that's really overwhelming for the puppy, right? There's a lot going on. So you're looking at what your schedule, your routine is. You're falling into kind of this cyclical routine of, oh, wow, between 9 and 10 in the morning, he seems to have his rambunctious time. This is where we might do some training and some play, and that might be a good time. Again, we have to look at the age of the children. It could be that a 2-year-old, definitely we need parental supervision and interaction with the young kids. When we get into the 14-year-old, I'd say 12 and up, we can be in the kitchen and the child can go into the exercise pen and sit down quietly and play with the puppy. I would say that would be appropriate. But for the young ones, it's parent goes in with the child. As I said, we want to mind that gap and create positive associations. And it could be 5 or 10 minutes. Really, puppies get tired really fast. So I wouldn't put a time on it. I would say let's go back and monitor the time of day and how that puppy is responding.
Jen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I fully agree again.
You're the agreement.
I fully agree with that.
I love
Go
that.
ahead, Michael.
No, I'm like, you're the agreement stand today. I agree with that. I love that. Okay, next.
No, it's just, like everything Sarah says is just so spot on. And, a lot of what she has dropped here today is personal experience too, so I know that she knows what she's doing. All her kids are good. Like, they're amazing with dogs. So I definitely, default to her on a lot of this stuff. It's just, she's very knowledgeable in this area. So I appreciate being up here and being given the opportunities to add. There's just not a whole lot because she's covered so much and she's just such a wealth of information. So yeah, supervision is just key, supervision. And I agree that, putting a time on it isn't probably the best way to go, but really minding that gap, supervision, as much as possible so that if you do have to walk away as the kid gets older and the dog is used to having that space with the kid, like, you can feel comfortable walking away or turning your head for 30 seconds and not worrying. But again, it's all like situational dependent, kid dependent, dog dependent. There's so many factors in it. And it all boils down to watching the kids and the dogs and all the body language that's happening in there.
I think another thing that's good is to give the kid a job. Like, get a flirt pole in that child's hand, get a toy in that child's hand, give them instruction. When I go over to a house and we're working with young kids, I quickly scan the environment and look for an opportunity for like a fun station for the child, or like, oh, go get your doll and let me see your doll. And, it's almost like an attention-seeking thing, too. Children, they love the puppy. They want a little bit, but they don't really want to be involved all that much. And as Jen said, it really is situational by child, too, as well as dog. And so we've got a variety of, different personalities and energy levels and kids that are interested. I mean, I have a young client who's, I think he's 12, and he's an amazing little trainer. He's involved and he loves doing it. And his little sister is really shy and she doesn't really want to partake, And so we have to look at the personalities of the kids too and find out what makes them tick, right? So we can help build their confidence as well as that connection on how to help them be a good friend to the dog, because dogs, like kids, they feel safe with.
We've heard so many times where parents they have kids and they're like, oh, let's get our kids a dog. It'll be their little play toy. Is that really a realistic idea?
No. Did I hesitate too long on that?
No.
I was waiting to see who answered first. That's why I didn't direct it to either one of you. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I get that call every day, every day right now. Oh, well, we got this puppies for our 12-year-old, but now the 12-year-old is getting bit and they don't know what to do and they're frustrated. Everybody's irritated with each other. Can you help us? Well, yes, I can. First thing is we want to always make sure that whatever dog or puppy is coming into the home, that they're set up for success right away, and that the kid who's welcoming the puppy or the dog into the home is also set up. And so when we fail to do that before the puppy gets in, and fail to prepare and, do a little homework beforehand, then that's when these situations kind of come up, right? And so I think that it's not always appropriate to get a child a dog, but I have had plenty of situations, plenty of clients come in who are doing really, really well teenagers and dogs, or older, 10-year-olds and dogs, and they're doing great. They just need a little bit more. They need more to do with their dog, and they want to progress into doing some fun tricks or something like that. And so there's all sorts of, again, everything that we're talking about today is very kid and dog situational. It depends on the kid, depends on the dog. We do a lot of fun stuff though. With, we had a 13-year-old boy come in with his pug, and the pug was, trying to bite, in all honesty. And he was kind of excitable, and this dog was irritating the child during school hours. And so we had to create a way for the boy to keep his dog busy when he was in school, and he could play with him on his breaks. This is homeschooling, of course, because COVID, right? And so the kid loved video games. And I asked him, because he was always on his phone when he came into train, right? And so I'm like, do you like to game at home? What's your favorite game? So I did a little research on that particular game. And I said, so your homework this week is to come up with ways that you can keep your dog busy. Maybe put your dog in a video game. Let's see what you can build him, and go room by room and see what you can do in each room. Sure enough, by the next week, the kid had all these great enrichment activities and exercises and tricks that he was teaching his dog in every single room every time he had a break from school. And the dog loved it. And he was tired in between. So when he was studying and on the computer, on the Zoom call or whatever, the dog was sleeping. So that's the kind of stuff that that I think really, really works well, is involving the kids on their level, like Sarah said. And Sarah, I think you have some sort of checklist, a puppy checklist for prepping before you get a dog. Is that right? Am I thinking of the right person?
Yes, I have a ultimate puppy preparation checklist.
Everybody should have that, Sarah. You should be sending that to me so I can check it out. So I could check it out, check out the checklist. That's interesting you said that, Jen, because I didn't even think about that, but that is such an obvious, is the fact that this last year there were so many kids homeschool. It probably did change the behavior of their relationship with their dog a lot because them being home. And that's interesting. I never even thought about that. That's got me thinking. When we're talking about kids and dogs, and I think a lot of times, like what I just asked about, like a lot of times parents will go out and get their kids a dog because it's a playmate. And maybe that's a way of them like, well, if I get them a dog, it'll be their playmate and they can play together and then I can have my free time. Maybe, who knows? I'm just thinking. But what about nighttime when it comes to go to bed? What about sleeping with your dog? What about kids sleeping with dogs? What's your thought on that, Sarah?
Again, situational, age of child, how old is the dog? Definitely not recommended for a young puppy who's learning to, control his blood cycles. I'm not going to knock co-sleeping. I wasn't a parent that did that. I love my dog on the bed.
It looks like we lost Sarah. Jen, let's jump to you. We get Sarah back. What's your thought about sleeping with dogs for kids?
Well, I sleep with dogs. I don't sleep with kids. But I'm just, I don't, and I do, but yeah. So, I'm kind of like Sarah. I think it definitely depends on the age of the dog, the age of the kid, and how the dog is sleeping. And if they're working on stuff like potty training or figuring out their sleep cycle, like that's probably not the best idea, because we really want that puppy to get that stuff done before starting to bed hop. And there are some dogs who grow up sleeping in their boy or girl's bed, and I'm not one to, like Sarah said, not one to knock that. I think it just depends on the dog and the child. Maybe Sarah's back now.
Yeah, I was just saying, not for a young puppy. Now, the puppy needs to learn to have his own space and acclimate and get a routine going, a good sleep cycle, potty training, all that stuff. And I think, especially when we're looking at young kids, it's probably not a good situation for young toddlers
I think over the growth of the dog and the relationships built within the household, the dog's going to gravitate if they have a goal of the dog being out of the house. I mean, out of a crate in the house to sleep, that the dog's going to choose to sleep where he prefers to sleep. It could be in the hallway, it could be downstairs, it could be at the foot of your bed. So I think it really depends on the dog. I'm not a believer in forcing the dog to sleep in a specific bed per se, because the kid wants that. Not.
You guys keep saying this about puppies. Puppies is a whole different thing. When they're puppies, you have to have them in their own space, so that they can learn how to use the restroom and know their potty, cycles and sleep cycles and all that. So I think that's really important when they're puppies. Let's discuss this one more thing that we're talking about. You had mentioned this earlier, Sarah, where you had a client that had 4 kids and they got a puppy, and one was poking them, one was pulling on them, and the other one was taking the food and all that. Let's talk about mealtime. Let's talk about what happens at mealtime. What should we be doing with our kids while we feed our dogs?
Let the dog eat in peace. If you have lots of little toddlers running around and you're like, I can't manage it all, then you need to find a place where the dog can feel safe. Put the puppy in the crate, in the exercise pen, off limits to bother the pup, young or old, while the dog is eating. I mean, I don't like to get poked and prodded when I'm trying to enjoy a meal. Do you?
No.
When we get our dogs, do we set up a calendar of events introducing them? How do we introduce our dogs to our kids? If we got kids at home and we just get a dog, what's a good time frame do you think it takes for the dog? I know, Jen, you always say 3+ months for the dog to get acclimated to the environment, but how about getting acclimated to the people? Jen?
Well, I think it's age dependent too, and also, are we bringing home a dog whose history we don't know? When we adopt dogs from rescue organizations or humane societies, sometimes we don't have that history. Most of the time we don't have a history. So we don't know how they're going to be with kids. We don't know a lot of times how long it's going to take to, work on things. With a puppy, who's 10 to 12 weeks, and that's a little different for me. I try to introduce younger puppies as soon as possible. Again, though, it really is up to the dog, and I leave it up to the dog. If they're looking scared of certain noises, well, let's work on that. Let's back the bus up. Let's slow it down. Let's figure out, how we can make sure that everybody in the household, kids included, understand when we do this is how the dog feels. And that, again, it all comes back down to observation and body language, right? I don't know if Sarah has anything to add to that.
No, I think that's spot on. I agree with everything you said. I mean, let's face it, you're bringing home an 8-week-old puppy with 4 children in the house. Everybody's going to meet the puppy, right? You can't touch the puppy for a week. Everybody's going to introduce. It's just about management. It's just about safe interactions. It's about monitoring and supervising. That all needs to be in place. And we get very relaxed too quickly. And that's when those growls and the poking and the prodding happen. So we've really got to pay attention a little bit more closely and not wait until the problems are created.
So Sarah, with you, okay, so now that we've had this experience of letting the dog get acclimated and all that, let's talk about time with kids. Let's say 6 months, a year goes by, 2 years go by. How does that affect the relationship with the dog and their behavior with the dog? Are you more relaxed as the dogs are with the kids over time, or do you still think there should be certain boundaries that the kids should always keep in place?
Oh, I think there should always be boundaries, because as kids grow, they get stronger, and as dogs grow, they get weaker, right, as they get older. So depending on the age, of course. And I told you about that 12-year-old, 10 to 12-year-old boy that came to my house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we've got to look at how old the child is at the moment when they got the dog, and are they really interested? It really goes back to the parents and how they're teaching their children to respect animals, I think, too. So I'm always super aware of children's interactions, even if they've had the dog for a year or two. And sometimes those can be the problems that we get called in for, right? Because it's been building. I don't know. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, it really is age dependent, dog and kid, and how the kid's been taught to be around animals, and that mutual. I don't even want to say respect. It's not necessarily respect. It's just we just need to make sure that everyone is safe. I mean, I'm a total safety girl, 100% all the time, just like Sarah. And, safety is definitely number one, but we also want to make sure that that as our kids get older and their brains are changing, our dogs' brains are changing. It's like a constant cyclical thing, right? Like we're always, just like us as dog trainers, we're always learning. We're always seeking out new information and better ways to do things. And I think it's the same with kids and dogs. It's just, we're constantly evolving in that area. And it's like kids growing up through school, there's grades, right? It's the same thing with kids and dogs. And there are certain levels that our kids can get to if we're teaching them the right things to do with dogs and how to treat them kindly and, with kindness and compassion and making sure that everybody's on the same page as far as how the dog is being treated at home is super important.
You just said something that's really brilliant. The changing and how their dogs are being treated and the kids are their brains are changing, different ages and all that. Let's talk about that really quick. I know we're getting to the top of the hours, but this was one of my questions I had. At what age, let's say the parents did buy the puppy for the kid because the kid wanted a puppy, and what age do you feel, or is it situational, as you guys always say, about a kid wanting to train their dog? Like you were talking about the one client that you have, the 8-year-old, I think, Sarah, that, where the kid themselves want to train their own dog. Is there an age that you look for that you say, okay, they're ready for it? Or where do you go with that, Sarah?
Again, it depends on the child. I mean, I've worked with some really focused little 3-year-olds, and some not so focused 3-year-olds. So sometimes, depending on the age, we have to give them tiny little tasks and manage and redirect them. But I say, the more consistent you can be in giving them, whether it's, you're training them all the time, right? We're teaching, we're educating. And so the more that we can verbalize things to look for, as I said earlier, about dogs' behavior and their nonverbal signals and recognizing what they like and talking about the dog, that's all teaching, right? That's teaching. We don't have to be touching. And so if a child is really interested in learning, embrace that and give them little tiny nuggets to work on here and there. My little young one, Robert, he's 9 now, and he is my little dog trainer. He always, on that school paper they have to fill out, what do you want to be when you grow up? He wrote dog trainer. So that's cute. So yeah, I think it really depends on the child. Sometimes the parents, like Jen said earlier, we brought this dog home for our 12-year-old. The kid is not interested. So again, yeah, we've got to look at the child and find, like she did with the child that plays games, like find that connection. Find that connection that's going to help build that relationship with you and the child, and you and the child and the dog.
Well, and that's the number one thing, is that connection, and where that connection lies between the relationships between all members of the family. We are at the top of the hour. Jen, anything you'd like to say in closing in safeties that we haven't touched?
Well, I think that this is such a heavy subject. The kids and dogs is a very, very big, deep, heavy subject for us too as dog trainers. Like we're always consistently every single day seeing these photos of kids being over the top with dogs and people laughing about it and posting about it, and I think that with all the heaviness of this discussion, I've left out fun, and I like to. That's how I teach. That's how I train, is by using fun. And when I have a kid come in It's all about the fun. Like, let's create a job for you, but let's make it really, really fun. Like, what do you like to do? What's your favorite thing to do at home? And have that conversation with the child, and just make sure that, I'm not a parent, so I can't say these are the things that need to go on at home as far as conversations go. But when kids come into the training center, we make it fun, we make it doable, super simple. Like, parents have a lot to worry about. So my job as a dog trainer with these parents and these kids who are coming in looking for help or looking for basic stuff with puppies and how to get along, puppies and kids. My job is to figure out what's going to work for that family, that child, and let's give them something to do in multiple moments, multiple scenarios at home to make it easier on the parents. And keeping it fun is the way to go, in my opinion.
I love that. So basically making safety fun for your pup. Sarah.
Yeah, I love all of that. I think it's really important to have fun. And I would say, I mean, even I get when we're working on like leash training or practicing anything with a child, I don't even involve the dog at first. And we can make it fun. I remember this little girl I worked with, she was probably 7, and we worked on, her girlfriend was over, like her little friend was over, and the little friend pretended to be the dog. And we were practicing on, like leash holding, skills. And so we made it fun without putting the dog in the situation to have an unpleasant experience in that learning, capacity. So really, yeah, making it fun. And as I said, connect with that child, but safety, and management. I can't, so many growls and bites can be avoided if we just observe and manage better.
Yeah, I think talking about with the body language is management with, understanding if they're relaxed, where they are, understanding your dog, who they are today. We definitely covered a lot today. We talked about body language. We talked about hugs. We talked about meal times, management, sleep time, greetings, what happens with kids as dogs get older. Really, this is a subject that is so deep and so it can go deeper and deeper. We can even dive deeper into preparation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close out our room today. I'm Michael, your host. I'm here with Jen and Sarah, both of them here in pet and kids safety today with me in Pet Check. Be sure to come back next week, learn more about safety. Who knows what our next topic is going to be and how deep we're going to dive into that. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Sarah, for being here today. As always, I enjoy seeing you ladies. And Sarah, welcome back to Clubhouse.
Thanks. This is super fun. And thanks, everybody, for hanging out and listening. It was great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And it's nice to see you guys down in the audience. Thank you for hanging out this whole time. We appreciate you guys.
Well, there you have it. I'm Michael with The Journey. Thank you for joining us today. We've been talking with Sarah and Jen about child safety with pets. Where do you begin? Where do you end? Does it end? Thank you for joining us again. Hit subscribe, hit like. We'll see you soon. I'm Michael, and I'm out.